Hello, Kristen. Thank you for joining us today. We have a couple of questions we wanted to ask you, and we really just wanted to kind of kick off. If you could introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself and your organization and the role that you play in it.
Absolutely. So great to meet all of you. My name is Kristyn DiDominick. I'm the executive director for the Bucks-Mont Collaborative. So the Bucks-Mont Collaborative is a nonprofit membership organization that focuses on fostering information and resource sharing, dialogue, and collaborative action on primarily health and human service issues in Bucks and Montgomery counties. Just as brief background, I'm a social worker, so that identity is really important to me. I really appreciate leaning in this work to the macro social work so that I can, as much as possible, affect change at a larger level. So that's a little bit about me.
Great, thank you. And in your role as executive director, I'm sure that you probably spend a lot of time kind of figuring out goals and projects that you need to do. Can you just talk about maybe one goal that your organization has this year or a project that you're really focusing your team on?
Absolutely. So this is a unique year for the collaborative in that we are engaged right now in a collaborative strategic plan with two other organizations. They are both membership organizations as well. So one is the Interagency Council of Norristown, and the other is the Tri-County Community Network. Collectively, we serve Bucks, Montgomery, and Chester counties. And so while there is a lot of alignment in what we do, we're both focused in on kind of connecting and convening organizations to tackle, community needs and issues, and as well as collective learning beyond like the silos of organizations. There are some unique niches to the work as well. And so our thought was as we kind of evolve and move kind of beyond like the public health emergency of COVID, how could we all come together to work with one another a little bit more strategically so that there is greater efficiencies to the work as well as impact? And so one of the kind of the core questions that we're looking at the collaborative is this initiative of this strategic planning work. So how can we create opportunities for individuals and organizations in all of our footprints and within all of our membership organizations to connect, to learn, and to act on the core issues in this region through really authentic engagement and relationship building that will lead to some sustainable and deeper impact. And so that's one of the areas that I'd love to get your kind of consultation on.
Great. Yeah. With that work and trying to connect with these different organizations and doing the strategic planning, have you identified a barrier that you think is going to be really a challenge that you're going to have to face or get through?
Yes. There's many wonderful areas of alignment. So we'll start there. But yes, I think there's a couple of barriers. So one is just capacity. So we are all fairly, modestly staffed organizations. So the collaborative is staffed by 1.5 folks. So myself is full-time, and then we have someone who's just kind of sunsetting her time with us now, and another person coming on. So we're still at 1.5 individuals. And the other organizations are also quite small. And so can we rise to this moment where the community is asking us to do more and do more convening work, but how will we kind of build out the infrastructure we need to do that effectively and to do that well? So the capacity is a huge question mark in my mind. And then just as well as the funding, which is, connected. So can we raise the funds that we need to do the work, to be able to hire staff, to be able to think about this work, more holistically? So I'd say capacity is our biggest barrier. And that will inform scale and scope to the work.
Yeah. Do you have any challenges working with your team? I know you said you only have like 1.5 right now, but it's really 3 different people that it's yourself and 2 other people that you're working with. Do you have any challenges or methods that you're using to kind of get them engaged in this kind of work and lead them along with it?
Yep. So we have weekly team meetings, and we also use a lot of project management software because we're remote, so we don't have an office. So, the opportunity to kind of come together through Zoom is very important. But then we also do a lot of project management through different kind of platforms that allow us to chat so that throughout the day, we're also kind of connecting and working together on that. So I think that remote work presents opportunities, but also presents challenges, and that we're not in a space together where we can just kind of turn and connect and talk. At the same time, I think that we're folks who do well just picking up the phone and kind of chatting it out anyway. So we've made it work. Yeah.
Do you ever have a chance to connect in person with them?
We do. Yeah. I look forward to those times the most. But one of my colleagues is in New Jersey. So to kind of come together, we have to be very strategic. So we found some really good restaurants midway where we can connect, which I love food. So good for me too. Yeah.
And I know that it's a smaller team,
Yeah.
but what would you say is the culture of your team?
So interestingly, we have done some work with all of us, but more intentionally so because we just onboarded an associate director who's part-time, but last month. And so we actually, because of that onboarding process, really had to take a look at our organizational culture. And so we did some work very specifically to say, what are our leadership styles? What are our conflict management styles? How do we see our roles within kind of our social change ecosystem? And so we actually used some tools to do that and to identify it with one another so we could have some really honest conversations. And we came to the conclusion that we have very similar leadership styles and cultural styles, which is great. So I ascribe to a servant leadership model where that's kind of really focused in on kind of raising up your team members and being, humble in the leadership. So thinking about kind of your team as your team and not this kind of hierarchical structure. And so my colleagues have very similar approaches to their work as well. So there's a lot of alignment.
And the last question I have for you then is, with 3 words, how would you describe your ideal culture? And what are 3 words that you would say you want to stay away from as for?
Ooh, it's a good question. So I would describe the collaborative culture in 3 words. We'd say humble, responsive, and I mean, it's in our name, so I'll say it. So collaborative, right? So all that we do, we strive for that. To be responsive to the needs of the community, to be humble so that we're learning, and to be collaborative in the approach as well as in the solution. What I'd like to stay away from in terms of organizational culture is, I'd say, well, I mean, one that comes to mind is toxic. So we don't want that. I'd say that it's a good question. I don't think anyone's asked me that question before. You want to stay away from, I guess, just being closed, right? So not being receptive, right? Kind of, and what else? I guess, I have to think on a third, but I'd say that kind of speaks to maybe where the directions I would go in. We want to be approachable, we want to be accessible, and we wouldn't want, and we want to be able to pivot. So I think that more than anything, what we've learned is, be open and receptive, and don't kind of just be so focused in on the work that we're doing that we're not able to kind of see what the opportunities in front of us.
I think what you gave was great, because oftentimes what we don't want to be guides what we want to emphasize. So I think staying away from toxicity, staying away from being closed really shows what you want to do with being open, receptive, collaborative. Those are all great. It's all great stuff.
Yeah.
So I want to provide an opportunity, Jesse, Frankie, Claudia, if you have any additional questions before we end.
I had one actually. So I know you kind of touched a little bit on it, but in terms of like staffing, like how do you see staffing? Do you see it as like a challenge right now? Like your current efforts to staff more people? I know it's short staffed right now as it is, and sometimes it may be beneficial for you. But how is staffing on like a level of importance to you right now within the organization?
It's a high level of importance. So as we look to the implementation of our strategic plan, I see opportunities to grow that are very strategic and aligned with what our community is asking for. So I would like to hire a part-time advocacy coordinator. So someone who could help kind of lead the larger work that we do at the collaborative around that space, who's also kind of, seasoned and experienced. And I think it would be valuable to have, on the team, more utility players. So folks who just have the skills to be able to kind of like join us in some of the membership and kind of collaborative work, to be able to just be, skilled hands and faces in some of this work with the community. I think that what's interesting is that throughout the collaborative's tenure, it has always been staffed by one person. So in fact, growing to where we are now is quite significant for us. And so, or I should say 1.5 folks. So kind of growing into where we are now is fairly significant. But I see only opportunities there to kind of grow strategically. Yeah.